Hi, folks. There's a link to the agenda in chat. Feel free to add anything there. The only topic so far is a discussion about delete races in multi-site. There's a tracker linked. It essentially involves races where we delete an object on the source zone, but it ends up being recreated. So objects persist after they're deleted. The bug was just updated with some comments about half an hour ago, kind of root causing it to bucket full sync. And it points out an issue where the local tombstone cache isn't reliable enough to prevent this in the general case. I think this is something that we've known for a while, but we need to explore solutions for it.
And this issue actually is raised by one of our developers. Unfortunately, he's not here now, but I think he's working on a proof of concept. I'm trying to reach him now, but probably he's not available today at this point.
Okay,
yeah. I believe he made some progress, but I'll ask him to update later in the tracker.
Okay. Yeah, so at the bottom, he proposes two different ways to solve it. And both of them seem to imply a need to remember all objects kind of unbounded forever. And we really need to find a way to avoid that. Yehuda, do you have any thoughts on this? It's been a while since you wrote it, but
I don't quite remember all the scenarios, but I would think that you wanna remember these for the time window where where this race can happen, which is like if you said it's because of full sync though.
right, for incremental sync, we have the zones trace info in the BI log. And so we can filter out things that we've already processed. But the full sync path doesn't get any trace info from the entries that it reads.
What you have with the full sync is the maybe the time that the ID or the log ID where you started the operation. Maybe don't think anything that was created afterwards. No, I'm not sure. Like thinking is if the full sync is a problem, sync everything that was created prior to the start of the full sync, and then everything following that would be synced back on the incremental sync. It's probably racy and not a good idea, but that's an option to explore. Something. The other thing would be to have a tombstone cache for longer, but and figure out when to erase it, which I'll need to to understand the issue better.
Yeah. So let's see, this would be the race here during full sync would be us listing objects that we've deleted locally, but the remote hasn't synced the delete for yet. Is that right? And we'll sync it back because we can't detect that we already deleted it.
There's more than 2 zones.
There are 2 zones, only 2 zones.
Only 2 zones, and so if we list the objects. We think an object and it is just being deleted. Okay, and then we created it on the new zone, and then we sync it back. Should we populate like the object now that on the full sync, maybe we need to update the sync trace with a source zone to start with. Or does it make sense?
What would you use the source zone for?
Yeah. Okay. Let me take a step back. So let's see if I understand it correctly. You have zone A, zone B. Let's say A thinks from B, fetches data from B. It fetched an object, and the object was now deleted on B. Like object O was deleted from B, but we just created it on A.
I think that this requires bidirectional sync. So an object O would exist on both zones. Zone A deletes it, but then runs a full sync on B. And so syncs it back after deleting it locally.
Why? A separate question. Why did it run a full sync after it already existed on both sides?
Well, the other side may have already done a sync from that as the source zone, even if sync hadn't run in the other direction yet.
All right. So it does a full sync. Okay, so B should have A for the sync trace, right?
Yes, but the sync trace would only be stored in its BI log entries.
It's not on the sync trace. We don't store it on the index anymore. We used to.
That's worth checking. I thought it was only in the log.
Well, it could be that it's only on the log, but at the time I remember at least wanting to put it there.
Yeah,
Wait.
if it is in the index, then we could extend the list objects API for sync to include the trace for each thing, and I think we could solve it that way. Well, yeah, I think, right? If we see an entry in our zone is in the trace already, but we don't have that object, then I guess we would assume that we deleted it since.
Yeah, we shouldn't think object that we were the origin for it. That's not quite true, actually. Maybe you wanna, maybe you wanna. that would be a problem if you wanna recover a zone. But think trace can be used here for this specific scenario. But again, I'm not 100% sure we keep it on the index. It might be that the protocol has it, but we don't send it. Or to the index, because I remember missing it somewhere when did the sync info provider. I remember not that. I think it was missing.
All right. I see that Tom joined the call. Welcome and thanks for the analysis in that tracker.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I agree with everything there. We're just looking for solutions that don't require us to track these deleted objects forever.
Yeah.
So when you were looking into this, you found the zone trace, and I know that that's stored in the BI log entries. Do you know, did you see it stored in the bucket index entries also?
I didn't. I think it's only in the BI log, but I was just trying to see that now, actually.
Okay. Yeah, the trace stores the full zone ID and bucket name, I think, now that per bucket replication happened. So it could be a lot of extra data to store with every index entry if we're not already.
I remember, like, the reason I think at the time where I created the short zone ID was so that it kind of abbreviates it, like shortens. Like the thinking was it's going to be too heavy on the indexes. But maybe we don't ended up not sending it because it kind of worked only with putting it in bucket index.
Yeah, the short ID would have helped there. But yeah, you did add more for per bucket replication since the entries could come from different buckets, I remember. One other thing to mention is that I have an outstanding PR related to the zone trace. It adds it to an attribute on the head object, so that a get obj or head obj can return a replication trace header saying which zones have seen it already. So I think the bucket listing could potentially read all of the head objects in order to provide the trace from that, assuming that we merge this PR. But that would make the bucket listings themselves a lot more expensive. Currently, they just read the index, but they would have to stat every entry to serve that.
Well, you can do it, continue to do it, like list everything, but then add a constraint on the fetch, right? Like, so it'll try to, but, or you can have the only the listing for this purpose that,
Actually, yeah, maybe listing itself doesn't need to send the traces, but the GET request to fetch the object, actually.
Yeah.
We could send a header with our own zone name, and it would return an error if that zone was already in the trace.
Yeah, similar to the if not change scenes or something. Or
Yeah, that sounds doable.
well, it can be a combination, right? You can have the listing that also filters it, because if we know we're gonna check it anyway, right?
Yeah, but the listing would have to stat all of the head objects to do that filtering, wouldn't it? I think that's the part we want to avoid.
Yeah. But you end up doing it anyway.
Well, we end up sending the GET request, which I think I guess we could avoid that part.
But, well, it's it's an optimization. It would work with, but both should work, right? And we should probably have both.
Okay. Yeah, but both do depend on us storing the trace in the head object at X adders.
Yep.
So any fix that we have kind of wouldn't solve existing object uploads. Only it would apply to new syncs. Jane, is this making sense to you guys? Any feedback there?
I think that makes sense.
All right. Well, would it help if I type up kind of a design proposal in the tracker issue? And if you're willing to work on it, then we can follow up from there.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. We're definitely willing to work on it.
Regarding the PR I linked that adds the attribute, when testing it with more than 2 zones, I was only seeing the last zone in the trace show up there. So it does need some more debugging to figure out why it's not getting the full traces. That's the only reason that it hasn't merged yet. But I can rebase that and test again and share what I find in the PR itself.
Yeah.
All right. Somya and Shopa, you guys were also looking into kind of related issues. Is this making sense to you guys? Any input that you have?
Hi, Casey. I don't have much input, but I guess at least it was these issues were seen even with incremental sync. So I'm not sure if it's for the exact reason or similar.
Okay. Yeah, this one would be
there are
specific to full sync, bucket full sync at least.
Okay. But at least one thing is common. There were multiple RGW servers doing the sync on both the zones.
Right. If it was only a single gateway, then we would expect the Tombstone cache to resolve most of the issues. So I guess if we fix this, can we remove the Tombstone cache altogether? I believe that incremental sync and full sync would no longer need it.
Maybe. Does it also serve for some performance improvements? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm also not sure. I mean, I think in either case, we would send a GET request to fetch it anyway, but with the Tombstone cache, we would just be able to add a if modified since header. Locally, it might avoid trying to read the object from Rados to see if it has a header, but that might be racy as it is, right? Like if we have a Tombstone cache, but then the object is uploaded to another gateway, maybe. But I think just fixing the race, and then we can look at the Tombstone cache part separately and do more testing afterwards would make sense.
I have a question, Casey. So is Tombstone cache used only for sync traffic, not for the regular eye?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
It would be regular delete requests that add entries to the Tombstone cache, but sync would be the only thing reading from it.
Okay.
All right, any other thoughts here? Thanks again, Tom, for the detailed analysis there. That helps a lot.
No problem.
So any other topics for the agenda? Any interesting discussions from Cephalicon that anybody wants to share? I see we're missing Dan and Matt, but anybody else that was there?
One thing is for the fairness issue, like we're wondering when this PR can be merged. Is there any pending discussion still there, or?
From my view, it's good and just needs a toothology run.
Okay.
Jilpa, anything else that you think needs to happen?
Yeah, and no, so I did schedule it. I mean, you did schedule a toothology run, and there were some val grind issues. So I don't know if it's related or it's something else. So I have to look through the results. But otherwise, I don't see there's anything more to add to it.
So the fairness issue on data sync will be worked on after this one is merged, right?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay, got it. Are you the one that is going to work on this? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm just working along with Casey and Mark. So we're working together on this.
Okay, yeah. Or just the reason why I'm asking is to see if there anything like we can like help in this, but we can like talk offline on this.
Yeah, I mean, sure, you could give the PR a try and see how metadata sync works for you.
Yeah, we're testing that actually.
Okay. Sure. Yes. Okay, thanks.
That's great. Yeah, if you have thoughts on extra kind of automated testing that we could do upstream, I think that would be really valuable.
Yeah, and
Feel
we're
free to
planning.
comment
yeah.
on the PR itself.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Sorry, Jen, I'm not sure if you have mentioned this log have been whatever issue.
I haven't. Can you speak a little bit louder?
Oh, is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically we have been trying to test this metadata log fix for the fairness issue, and we found yes, it works by like distribute the shard relatively evenly across all the RGW instance. But it seems once the RGW instance gets the log, it never release it. It's just like reduce the expect time for the log, and it never releases until unless you like restart the RGW instance. I'm not sure if that's intended or that's a bug.
So I think it is intended. In the original design, so each RGW is generating a bid for each shard, right? And it's the highest bidding Rados GW that takes the lock.
Yeah.
In the original design, each RGW would occasionally shuffle its bids, and so that might cause it to no longer be the highest bidder and drop the lock.
Yeah.
But it no longer does that. So the only reason that it would drop a lock is if another Rados GW started up that generated a higher bid.
Okay.
And so I believe that this is still going to spread out the shards evenly as gateways start and stop. But if you have cases that don't work well, then we'd love to hear about them.
Yeah. And another potential issue we've seen with this design is it tries to distribute the shards evenly, but if say the traffic on different shards are not evenly distributed, that means the actual traffic will be like more on some of the nodes, right?
Yes. Yeah, the design kind of assumes that there would be an even load between log shards.
Yeah.
And I think especially in metadata sync, that's probably not always the case. For data sync, I would expect it to be a lot more even.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
Yeah. Generally, I don't think that metadata sync usually has that much traffic, and so I think it's data sync that's a lot more sensitive to this, and so I think or hope that it'll be good enough there.
Yeah, sure.
All right. If there's nothing else, thanks everybody. Talk to you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.